Mixing Laws 2.3. Home Thrones continue. We are kings and queens of our homes. And so let's go to Solomon. You can go back to segment 2.2 and check out where we left off from, where we focused a little bit on the queen part that was mixed with some kings. Proverbs 31, Genesis 2:18, 1 Timothy 2, verse 12 through 14, and Titus chapter 2, verse 5. And so now we're going to kick it off with Solomon. Solomon was like the focal point of mixing, because, I mean, he had a lot of wives. So he mixed with a lot of different women. But like I said, mixing was already taking place. Solomon just took it to the next level. And, you know, it's all about balance, you know, keeping it in balance. And, you know, we discussed Proverbs chapter 11, verse 1, Proverbs chapter 16, verse 11, Leviticus chapter 19, verse 35 and 36, Ezekiel 33, chapter 13, verse 13 through 20. And, of course, you know, those are the laws that have to do with balance. In Deuteronomy 17, chapter 17, verse 14 through 20, was the balance that the Most High was trying to create for kings. Not to have too much horses. For us, it's anything with wheels. Or actual horses, because people still have horses. And don't have too much gold and silver, money, material things, you know. And don't have too many women. And don't marry certain kind of women, because they would turn your heart away from him, having too many in certain kinds. And those women not being converted, according to Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 10 through 17, what you're supposed to do when you marry a foreign woman. So let's look at Solomon, because the game changed after him, and he was the game changer, you know, just to put it simple. 1 Kings chapter 4. Let's look at one of the things of balance that the Most High said he was supposed to have. And don't have too many horses. And he had, in 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 25, going on into 26, he had 40,000 stalls for horses. I'll let y'all do the math on the horses, but let's just take it to present day. How many cars can you drive? How many spare cars do you need? How many boats do you need? How many of anything with wheels do you need when you just have too much? You know, when you just have too much. And then when you go back to Proverbs chapter 30, verses 7 through 9, it talks about, you know, not having too much and not having too little. Because if you have too much, you'll turn from the Most High and forget him. You have too little, then you'll steal. And that's like stealing from the Most High, because he said don't steal. So that's using his name in vain. And so you still go from the Most High. So you got to have a balance. And so, you know, bless somebody with a car. Sell it cheap. I don't know. I mean, it's just sitting up gathering rust and moss. I know some people that got cars in their backyard that the grass is growing up through them. And when they talk about the car, you think it's like operating, running, and you go and see it, and you figure out, okay, we got animals that live in this car now, critters. So, you know, let go of that stuff, y'all. Okay, let's go to 1 Kings chapter 10. And chapter 10, you guys going to read it. Basically, chapter 10, when the Most High said in Deuteronomy 17, for kings of your home throne, of your empire, whatever you king of, he said don't have too much gold and silver. When you read chapter 10, when I say Solomon was stacking, he was stacking. And you got to read it. I mean, they was bringing in shiploads of gold, silver, precious stones every year. King Hiram and Sidon, or Tyre, ships just coming in with gold. He had vessels of gold. You know, silver was kind of downplayed, but he still had it. Gold was more precious, I guess, back then, and it is more precious anyway. So, you know, he had stacks of it. He was loaded. You know, the stuff that Queen Sheba bought, and then he gave the Queen of Sheba a lot of stuff. And, I mean, look at verse 14. Let's look at one verse. 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 14. The weight of gold that came to Solomon yearly was 666 kegars of gold. I don't know what Kegars is, but that sounds like a lot. You know, he had vessels down in 21 of chapter 10 that were gold, refined gold, not of silver. Go down to 22. There's the shiploads of gold, you know, of ivory and apes and baboons, precious, you know, exotic animals was coming in. Greater than any sovereign of the earth in riches, in wisdom. So he was loaded. And maybe it was too much. You know, it's not my judgment to make, but, you know, read it for yourself. The Most High said, don't have a lot, distribute it. Help people, take care of people, take care of the community. And maybe he did. It was peace during his time. It was no fighting, so maybe he did. But you have to read the other books to find out other things about Solomon. There's other left out books you can read to get a little bit more specific and detailed. Now let's go to the major problem that changed the game for our heritage. And that's in chapter 11. And this has to do with the women. He had 1,000 women. 1 Kings chapter 11, starting at verse 1, and you just, the whole verse, but you go down and you see in verse 3, he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. That's 1,000. Now, I know time is messed up. It's only 300. They say, well, Rome say it's 365 days in the year, the Gregorian and all of that. But 364 is what the Most High set up. And so still, even if it was 400 days, I mean, what do you do with 1,000 wives? It ain't none of my business. You know, maybe some of them they just love being in the castle. I don't know, but that's Solomon's business. But here's what the Most High said. Don't have so many women because they'll turn your heart from them. And only marry a certain kind because you'll be serving all kind of other stuff. You know, too many women. And here it is. When you start at 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 1, he's marrying the daughter of Pharaoh. He's marrying Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, Hittite women. That's the Canaanite ones where it was abominable. They was abominable. We never moved all of them out, so the abomination was still there. We were still living in it. So the Most High said, don't touch them. He was trying to see if our heart was circumcised to do what he said and not touch them. But here we go. We touching them. we going in unto him. And he says in verse 2 of chapter 11, 1 Kings, that he said, don't go into them. And they don't come into you. So you leave them alone and don't let them bother you, basically, because certainly they will turn your hearts away from him into their mighty ones. So you be on they Christmas, they Thanksgivings, they Easters, Estras, their 4th of July's, their Mama Day, Papa Days, Memorial Day, Labor Day, 4th of July that ain't even independence for us, you know, their Thanksgiving days. All these foolish holidays that are pagan holidays, these foreign women will put you on and turn your heart away from the Most High, from his truth. And the Most High said, don't do it. Don't do it. And when you go down to verse 4, chapter 11 in 1 Kings, you'll see his heart was turned away. And he put up Ashtaroth poles, you know, them poles, them totem poles, and they had penises from them and just all kind of foolish people doing abominable things to those poles, women prostituting to them. That's the kind of pose that Solomon put up. He had all the other females, abominable idols that they worship from their lands and customs that they did. He burnt incense with all these women to their gods. And when you come down here in verse 9 of 1 Kings chapter 11, the Most High appeared to Solomon twice and said, Solomon, don't do it. Don't go after mighty ones. These other mighty ones, these other gods and these other lands. And Solomon kept doing it. And the result was in verse chapter 11 is that he gave Solomon's kingdom to his servant, Jeroboam. Gave it to his servant. And then the ultimate thing is that in verse 14 of chapter 11 of 1 Kings, he rose up an enemy from the Edomites which was a seed of a sovereign, of a king, of a prince, of a leader of a land of the Edomites. He rose that enemy up against Solomon. So y'all thinking that the devil's out to get y'all. Now the Most High is using that enemy to get you because he's trying to do this. He's trying to spank that behind. Get right right now. Y'all got the enemy against you and you still ain't getting right. And so he raised the enemy up. Here come the punishment. What's the enemy? Or it could be drugs, alcohol, food, other kind of addictions, TV addictions, phone addictions, tablet addictions, sucking thumb addictions, shaking back and forth, people that can't be still addictions. He raises an enemy up against you, places, people, things, conversations, because you won't get it right. So he raises up an enemy to spank you, to get you out of your mess. He uses mess to get you out of your mess, and you still don't. You still don't. You're still hard-headed, and you still want to be disobedient. And so then our home thrones, our palaces, they all tore up. You know, our servants got them now, and it ain't even in the family no more. It's just somebody else then came through and bought it and tore it up, and it's wrecked. You know, we go homeless or have to end up getting something else. I mean, it's just confusion and chaos comes in. And the Most High is saying, you was the king and queen of that home. And I gave you the balances that you were supposed to use to keep it balanced and to keep it proper. And so even though he permits us to have wives, that doesn't mean that you get wives that your other wives don't know about, and there's conflict and controversy going on, and this wife is on a pagan holiday and these wives are on the truth. All that unrighteousness causing conflict, and then you sneaking around, serving other guys, going to clubs and doing Valentine's Day parties and different stuff, and it's just chaos in your home. Stop it. But we'll continue with the next segment with Ahab and Jezebel, and then we're going to go off into some Ruth with Boaz, because he did it good, and then we'll precept that with of course, what happens when you don't be a righteous redeemer and you know about your heritage, and a woman wants to be covered and you don't have a wife or wives that understand, and it's just a mess. And so we'll get off into that. Love y'all. Study the removed and left out books of the Bible and history in totality before the information age as we know it is no more. Love to the tribes. Earthly Mother, Heavenly Father, angels, and Big Bro, DH8, don't hate. I'm out.